The event arena where you were able to obtain this Yuno for free as a free-to-play character has just ended, and today we're going to be talking about how you guys should be building this character so that he can be useful in both PvE and PvP. I will say right off the bat, he is more of a PvE character, and that's where you're going to want to use him as opposed to PvP. We're going to talk about how you guys should be building his skills, what skills you want to build first, what skill cards you want to equip to him, what gear you want to run on this guy, whether or not you actually want to enhance him, what talents you want to do for the talent tree, and then of course what teams he is going to fit well on for both PvE and PvP. So let's start with his passive. His passive inflicts a 10% reduced attack debuff on all enemies for 1 turn upon using skill 2. So that's really nice when you couple that with what the other things his skill 2 does. You get this passive for getting him to LR status. For his skill 1, it is called Windstorm, and it inflicts a 15% reduced mobility debuff on an enemy. If you upgrade this all the way to level 5, you then do a 20% reduced mobility debuff on the enemy, which is really pretty decent when it comes to PvP. That's going to help you out a lot and actually give him some usefulness in PvP. And then his skill 2 is called Tornado. It is an AoE attack, and it inflicts a reduced attack level 2 debuff on an enemy for 2 turns. Like, this is okay, because it reduces their attack by 44%, but then remember you also have the passive's extra 10%, so it's actually 54% reduced attack, meaning they're doing half the amount of damage, which is pretty good. And then this part comes from his skill card. For every active debuff on an enemy, attacks after granting a 5% increased crit damage buff. Now that's not super crazy considering this is a debuffer character and you're not really building him for damage, and also he doesn't have the highest crit rate. His base crit rate is 13.5%, so having extra crit damage, I don't know, it's just not that great. So it could be good if you, I guess, built him straight for crit rate, but really you're not gonna want to do that. So yeah, it's awkward. It's not really that great, but the reduced attack is pretty good, and then it's an AoE attack that does some damage. If you level it up, it just scales and does more damage as you level that up. And then for his special skill, it's called Wind Spear of the Sun. This is another AoE attack, and this one inflicts an Incapacitate level 3 debuff on all enemies for 2 turns, which increases their damage taken by 50%. And then it also inflicts Concentrated Attack debuff on a designated enemy, so just one of them, for 1 turn, and that makes your attacks hit like their crits. Okay, so this is, if this gave Concentrated Attack to all enemies, then he would be insanely good, but they really held back with his kit, right? And then this one just scales as well when you upgrade it, so it doesn't increase the Incapacitate level or anything like that. And then for his combo skill is actually one of the better ones. I really like his combo skill for both PvP and PvE purposes. It inflicts a reduced defense level 4 debuff on all enemies for 1 turn. That is really pretty good for PvP. Reducing defense by 70% for a turn, that's pretty nuts, especially when coupled with the right characters. And then attacks after removing immortality from an enemy. That right there is really good for like the limited stages in PvE, as well as any characters you might encounter who have immortality, like Academy Fuegoleon or Licht or stuff like that. In PvP, that's going to be pretty decent. Okay, so overall he has some pretty decent utility. The problem is he just doesn't do a ton of damage, and he's also not like the fastest character. He's okay, he's got 112 speed, but you know, he could be better. Now in terms of upgrade priority, I would probably actually upgrade his skill 1 first to get that extra 5% reduced mobility, because that is going to be fairly useful. Then I would probably upgrade skill 2 because you're going to be using that more than you use his special skill, right? And then I might actually upgrade the combo skill, because I feel like this is a character where you end up using the combo skill more than you use his special just because of what it does. And then last but not least, I'd upgrade his special. So he's kind of got a weird upgrade order, but that's probably what I would do if I was in your guys' shoes, and that is what I want to do when I eventually get around to fully working on him. He is a free-to-play unit, and right now there's just better units that you want to upgrade their skills for. But if you were thinking about upgrading his skills, there you go. Now in terms of skill cards, what should you be equipping to this guy? Well, his skill card is a decent option because it gives you this additional effect right here if you do happen to land a crit, right? And then you have the passive skill, 48% chance to inflict instant HP recovery immunity on an enemy for 1 turn upon landing a crit. So once again, relies on crit. So because his skill card completely relies on crit, I wouldn't consider it the best skill card to put on him unless you're running crit gear. If you're running crit rate gear, that's going to give him increased crit rate, then you could run this and it actually have quite a bit more usefulness. Now, the gear I'm going to recommend running to you guys is not crit rate gear, so you might not want to run his skill card. So in terms of other skill cards you could be running, you could be running something like Silent Stone right here, which is an SR skill card, applies 30 to 50% increased defense and 10% increased endurance to yourself. This is just going to give him more survivability in both PvE and PvP scenarios. Another one you could run is pretty much any debuffers card really, but I like this one. Has a 35% chance of applying 10 to 20% reduced crit resist to an enemy for 2 turns upon attacking anytime you attack, right? So imagine you do this with like his combo skill that reduces defense and it works out pretty dang well. You could also run Lotus for like PvP, the Cunning Commander skill card, and what this one does is it has a 25% chance to apply a 2 to 10% speed reduction depending on how much you have it leveled up to an enemy for 1 turn anytime you attack, which is once again good for PvP. And then this one is going to be coming out with Season 4 for Global here soon, and it's called Little Halloween Devil. Upon taking damage, there is a 20 to 100% chance to inflict a SP -1 debuff on all enemies, which could go crazy, right? So that could be really, really good. So those are the skill cards I would potentially end up running on him, and at least this one right here is pretty obtainable for most people. If you don't have the others, that's okay. It's not a big deal. And then beyond skill cards, the other things that you should be doing, let's talk about his gear. So I did mention crit rate. You could build crit rate, but I personally wouldn't. I would personally go for a full mobility set, give him more speed, because you want your debuffers, especially in PvE, to go before your attackers, right? So in order to accomplish that, you do have to give him more speed, basically. That way he's able to go and do his defense down first before your attackers actually attack, right? So him having the low speed that he has is kind of rough, but yeah, I would give him a full mobility set, and then besides that, I would give him a defense set, which gives him plus 30% defense if you have the gold set, to give him more survivability in PvE and PvP. Now, in terms of stats that you're building for, you are going to be building towards magic attack as much as you can. So like right here, I have magic attack and a magic attack substat, and then you have to go defense, but I have magic attack on a substat there. So get as much magic attack as you can to give him as much damage as you can possibly give him. Ideally, I will eventually switch some of these out to where I have all LRs on him eventually, but for right now, I can't. Okay, so it is what it is, but I have a lot of magic attack on him. And then really quickly, when I'm talking about sets, what is a set, in case you don't know? A set is the Secret of the Deep Sea set, and you can see there's different pieces of it. We have Essence of the Deep Sea right here. We have Conch of the Deep Sea, we have Deep Sea Pearl, and we have Deep Sea Scale Fragment. You have to equip all 4 pieces of that set to be able to get the set bonus. And when I talk about gold sets have a gold star next to them, like you see right there. And if we were to go to sets here, you can see attack, defense, HP, mobility. And then if you look over here, you have the gold sets, attack, defense, HP, mobility. Always go for the gold sets if you can, because the gold sets are going to be better stat-wise for your character. Now, in terms of enhancement, some people might have gotten very lucky and been able to fully enhance this guy if you were able to get to like top 500, okay? But for the majority of people, you were not able to get there because your defense teams were getting beaten and you couldn't climb fast enough with your attack team, right? So like I personally was like rank 1000 and I could never get above rank 1000 to get into the top 500 to get the extra dupes of this Yuno. So the question is, should you guys be enhancing him, or should you be using versatile mage pieces on him to get him fully enhanced, okay? You could also potentially pull him from the Season 3 banner, but like, yeah, so at level 2 enhancement, upon landing a crit, once again, he has like no crit rate, there is a 50% chance to inflict a 10% increased damage taken debuff on all enemies for 2 turns. Does not stack. So if you do happen to get 2 enhancements into him, you could, once again, put crit rate gear on him and start making use of that. But like, it's just, he's got such a weird kit. And then for enhancement level 5, upon landing a crit, there is a 100% chance to inflict a 10% increased damage taken debuff on all enemies for 2 turns, okay? And it does not stack, so keep that in mind. And your crit damage does go up to 60%. He does quite a decent amount of crit damage, but like it doesn't matter because he's just not ever going to have the stats as a debuffer to do massive amounts of damage. So he's just kind of weird. Now, if you were to ask me, should you enhance him? I would probably say no. Don't waste your versatile mage pieces on him. If you happen to pull an extra copy, I might actually even trade in the extra copies for other things in the shop, okay? He's just not really worth enhancing. His kit is just kind of weird, okay? But he finds utility definitely in PvE, but a little bit more rough to use in PvP. Now, in terms of talents for this boy, what should you be running? You could really go one of two ways. You could go for magic attack and crit rate here, which is probably what I'll do to give him a little bit more crit rate so he's not quite so bad. Or you could go for the damage dealt and the crit damage. Okay, you could go for those two because he's already getting the extra 10% crit damage. If you enhance him, that would be 70% crit damage, right? That'd be pretty dang insane, plus extra damage dealt. However, once again, debuffer doesn't have the greatest stats. He's not going to do the most damage. So I would just go for this magic attack and crit rate. That's probably going to be his best. And then I would go for flat defense plus 20% and stacking defense and crit resist to give him more survivability. And then on the support tree, you could go for either or. I would personally recommend Swiftness, but you could also go for Mage's Blessing. Swiftness is going to give him an SP back when he has less than 2 SPs. It'll let you get your combo attack back faster, your special attack back faster, whichever one you want to use. But remember that combo attack is pretty good with the reduced defense and getting rid of immortality. I think that's pretty crazy, and it's AoE. And then Mage's Blessing right here could give you your skill 2 back more, but remember skill 2 just reduces their attack, which I'm not the biggest fan of reducing enemies' attack. I'm more of a fan of reducing defense. So like, yeah, if you're just in general, I think this is going to be the better option. And then of course run damage resist as your other option no matter what. Okay, so those are the talents I would run on him. Now let's talk about potential teams for this guy. We are going to talk about PvE and PvP teams both. So this first team right here is a PvE team that I actually am thinking about running for Hall of Illusions. The idea here would be to, of course, buff Raya and to do debuffs with Nebra and with Yuno. And the interesting thing about this is because Yuno is able to do defense down on his combo skill and Nebra is able to do incapacitate on her combo skill. It works out pretty well because then you get the defense down and the incapacitate in one turn, which is pretty cool. And then you buff with Raya, William, buff Raya, and then Raya just one-shots the enemy in Hall of Illusions. I think it's stage 85? 85, I think, is where I'm at right now. Let me actually double check that. Let me show you guys. Hall of Illusions. Oop, that's Memory Hall. Hall of Illusions, stage, 85. This guy right here. You have to nuke him in one turn, so Yuno is actually a pretty decent option for stage 85. Like, he's not going to be the best, but he's definitely viable for that particular stage. So that's a PvE option team right there you could run. Then also a PvP team. I have tested this one out. I will be doing a showcase with this specific team later. You could run is this. So you have Yuno for his combo skill, and then you have Noelle doing her AoE attack. So AoE defense down, AoE damage works pretty dang well. You have Valtos for speed, and you also have Julius for big nuking damage as well as AoE damage. So this team works out pretty well right here. You could potentially try to run an all green team, which I don't really recommend. I tried out like different variations of the green team, and it doesn't work that well with the current units on global. Maybe when we get the Charlotte and stuff like that are coming out later, it'll work out better. But for right now, you could run something like this, and you could also run, where is he? Academy Jack. And that team could potentially work okay because then you use the combo attack here to do defense down. He gets the benefit of having an additional miscalculation attack whenever you use the combo attack, so he'll get an additional attack, and he could potentially kill somebody with the defense down, but you do have to have your Jack very, very leveled up to be able to make use of this strategy. Then you have Valtos for speed and Radius for protection. So here's a green team you could potentially run. It doesn't work as well as the first team I just showed you guys though. So I would go with the first team personally, but try out different things and do whatever works for you. And that is the end of Yuno's build guide. If you guys did enjoy the video, please consider going down there, hitting that like button, hitting that subscribe button, and thank you guys so much for watching. Peace.